Friends in Christ, grace to you and peace from the one who is, who was, and who is to come again. Amen. You know, some of the most important lessons that I ever learned in life, I've learned from my parents, especially when I was a child, although I'm still learning important lessons from my parents still to this day. You know, as I think back on my childhood, I think about some of my values and some of the things that I learned. I mean, of course, I learned from my parents the basics of, you know, like tying your shoes and, you know, how to get your pee and poop in the potty, all those real important things that serve you real well in life. But more than that, I learned things like, you know, the value of hard work, of setting goals and developing plans to help reach your goals. I learned from my mom, as I shared with the kids, never to be afraid, to not be afraid, to face my fears. I learned from my dad that in all things you always try to do your very best. You do your very best. One of those core values. I learned responsibility, that it's important to be responsible, to mean what you say and say what you mean and take responsibility for your actions, even when you've done wrong. A lesson that we're working on in my house this weekend as one of my two boys, we're not sure which one yet, broke one of my childhood precious tractors, toy tractors, that fell from on top of a high bookshelf, and it broke. And one child says the other one did it, and the other child says the other one did it. And so we're learning and trying to teach a lesson about lying and telling the truth and taking responsibility for our actions in our household this weekend. That was yesterday in a nutshell. So these things are important. I learned about integrity in relationships. From my dad, I learned how to do my taxes and how to manage my finances. All sorts of important life lessons get passed on from generation to generation. As you think about your own childhood and your own relationship probably with your parents as the primary teachers in our lives, you probably think of many life lessons that served you so well over the years that you learned from mom or from dad. Well, it's common that parents pass on to their children some of these most important life lessons. And today, in our Old Testament lesson from Jeremiah, we hear of this boy named Jeremiah who was learning some very important lessons from his Father in heaven. As important as it is to learn from our parents, God has even more important lessons for us to learn about life. The most important lessons for us to learn about life, actually, our parents are not the author of, but in fact, God is. God is. God is the author of these most important lessons for us to learn. The Bible, some people have used an acronym for the Bible, basic instructions before leaving Earth. Have you ever heard that before? Yeah, so, the Bible is full of basic lessons for living life. The Bible is full of basic lessons for living life. And it's never too early, nor is it ever too late, to start paying attention, to start learning these lessons from God. We think sometimes as we grow up, we think someday we're going to arrive, right? We learn and we learn and we learn, and then at some point we've learned enough, right? And we now know enough that we don't need to learn anymore. But that's never the case. We need to always keep learning. Always keep learning. If you felt like maybe you've arrived, let me know. I want to know what your secret is, because I don't think it's possible to ever arrive. But perhaps, and if you think maybe you stopped learning, to say, I need to recommit to learning some more and to hearing anew what God has to say. It's never too early, nor is it ever too late to start learning. So today, we learn from Jeremiah's experience 3 important lessons for living a faithful life. The first important lesson for living a faithful life is that God's got a job for you. God has got a job for you. In Jeremiah 1:4, we hear this. Now the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. And then in verse 7, you must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Jeremiah was given a job from God. He was given a job from God. He has been set apart for a particular task, a special role that God had in mind for him. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you to. So Jeremiah has got a particular task. Well, sometimes I think in our life, it's a common thing to wonder what our purpose is in life, or what our role is, or how we fit into a particular circumstance. And sometimes we find ourselves asking that question, why am I here? What is this all about? And for some of us, we might come to the conclusion, unfortunately, that maybe I really don't have a role, or I don't really fit in. One of the primary reasons suicide is such a major problem is for this very reason. The fact that people feel purposeless and worthless. But I don't think that's true at all. I believe that just like Jeremiah, each and every one of us has got a unique purpose, a distinct calling from God. We each have a job to do from God. God's got a job to do. And Jeremiah had a special job. Your job isn't going to be just like Jeremiah's. It can't be. Your job is going to be special and unique for you. That's why God made you unique, for a special role, for a unique job that only you really can truly fulfill in the way that God intends. In the way that God intends. Truth is that often, though, we don't listen. We don't listen to how God is calling us. You know, here we have a story of how Jeremiah literally is hearing the word of the Lord and experiences the Lord reaching down and touching him. Now, did that really happen, or was that an experience that happened in the midst of prayer and devotion? I don't know. You know, was there a voice that came out of the clouds that other people heard? We don't know. Did other people witness a hand? I don't know. But it was that real to Jeremiah. Jeremiah was paying attention to what how God was calling him. He heard the call. He heard the call. And all too often, I think we don't pay attention to how God is calling us. We don't hear God's voice. We don't hear God's voice. And so if you don't hear God's voice, then we are left wondering why we're here. Well, if you find yourself wondering why we're here, what your purpose is, then there's one place to go, one person to turn to find out. That's God. Turn to God in prayer. Say, God, what is my purpose? How are you calling me right now, right here, to serve you? And see what God says and listen to his voice. If you're looking for your answer anywhere else, you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking in the wrong place. You got to look to God. You got to look to God because God's got a job for you. What's your job? What's your purpose? How is God calling you? You know, this is a common problem, a common question in life. In fact, when my last church, we did a demographic study of the community. It was kind of just this general suburban context, suburban Dayton, Ohio, Dayton and Cincinnati area. And you know the number one concern of the people in the area was? Life direction. Life direction was their number one big question. And I don't think they're alone. For many Americans, for many people, that is a common problem. Life direction. What's my purpose? What's my place? Why am I here? What am I doing? Well, God has got a job for you. Your task is to help try and figure out how God is calling you. How is God calling you? Uniquely, like Jeremiah was calling.